The secret of Job that every believer should know. You can't miss this. The questioning about the suffering of the righteous is an ancient and profound theme that permeates the human experience. The story of Job narrated in the Old Testament serves as a powerful example of this reflection. In it, we find a just and devout man who faces extreme trials permitted by God and executed by Satan. This narrative invites us to examine our own beliefs about divine justice and the purpose of suffering. In our lives, as we delve into this story, we can identify with Job's struggles and questions. How often do we wonder why good people face difficulties, while others, seemingly less deserving, prosper? This question is neither new nor exclusive to our era. It resonates through the centuries, touching the hearts of countless individuals who seek to understand the apparent paradox between divine goodness and human suffering. Job's journey teaches us valuable lessons about faith, perseverance, and the nature of the relationship between man and the divine. It challenges us to reevaluate our expectations of how life should be, and invites us to a deeper understanding of the divine plan. Through Job's trials, we are reminded that our limited perspective often prevents us from seeing the full picture that God sees. This story also offers us a glimpse into the heavenly dialogue, where God allows Satan to test Job's faith. This aspect of the narrative raises intriguing questions about free will, divine sovereignty, and the role of evil in our lives. Does God sometimes allow us to go through hardships to strengthen our faith? How can we maintain our integrity in the face of seemingly unjust trials? As we explore these questions, it's important to remember that Job's story doesn't offer simple or easy answers. Instead, it invites us to deeper reflection on the nature of faith and divine justice in moments of doubt and despair. We can find solace in Job's example, who maintained his integrity. Even when he didn't understand the reasons for his suffering. Job's narrative also reminds us of the importance of community in times of trial. Job's friends, though often misguided in their advice, demonstrate the value of presence and support in difficult times. This encourages us to be compassionate with those who suffer, even when we don't have all the answers to their questions. One of the most powerful lessons from Job's story is the idea that our faith should not depend on our external circumstances. Job maintained his devotion to God even when he lost everything he had. This challenges us to examine the foundation of our own faith. Do we trust God only when things go well, or is our faith strong enough to withstand life's storms? The book of Job also addresses the question of theodicy, the justification of God in the face of evil and suffering in the world. Through the dialogues between Job and his friends, and later with God himself, we are confronted with different perspectives on why evil exists in a world created by a good and all-powerful God. These discussions invite us to deepen our understanding of the divine nature and our place in the universe. God's response to Job coming from a storm is one of the most striking moments of the narrative. Instead of offering a direct explanation for Job's suffering, God responds with a series of questions that highlight his incomparable wisdom and power. This reminds us that often the answers we seek are beyond our limited comprehension. Job's story also teaches us about the importance of humility before the divine. Despite defending his innocence, Job eventually pensive, questioning God's ways. This doesn't mean we should accept suffering passively, but it reminds us to approach our struggles with an attitude of reverence and trust in the greater divine plan. A fascinating aspect of the narrative is how it addresses the question of retribution, the idea that good deeds are always rewarded and bad deeds punished. Job's friends insist on this simplistic view, but the story as a whole challenges this notion, showing that reality is much more complex. This invites us to re-examine our own beliefs about justice and reward. Job's final restoration is a crucial element of the story, but it's important not to interpret it as a simple formula of suffer, now be rewarded later. Instead, we can see it as a testament to God's grace and generosity, which cannot be predicted or controlled by our actions. This reminds us to trust in God's character, even when we don't understand his methods. Job's story also offers valuable insights into dealing with grief and loss. The way Job expresses his pain and frustration without abandoning his faith can be a model for us in times of sorrow. This encourages us to be honest in our emotions before God, knowing that he is great enough to handle our doubts and questions. Finally, Job's narrative invites us to a broader view of life and the divine purpose. It reminds us that our individual experiences are part of a larger plan that we may not fully understand. This doesn't diminish our pain or struggles, but offers a perspective that can help us face challenges with courage and hope. As we reflect on Job's story, we are challenged to examine our own faith and how we respond to life's difficulties. Can we, like Job, maintain our integrity and trust in God even when we don't understand the reasons for our circumstances? This timeless narrative continues to inspire and guide us in our quest for meaning and purpose amidst life's trials. Job's life in Uz was a remarkable example of prosperity and righteousness. As one of the most influential men in the East, he enjoyed a privileged position both materially and spiritually. His wealth was evident in the vast herds he owned, a clear sign of abundance in that time and region. These herds were not only a status symbol, but also the basis of the local economy, providing food, clothing, and trade. Job's family was equally impressive, with 7 sons and 3 daughters. He was blessed with numerous offspring, something considered a great honor in ancient cultures. This large family was not only a source of personal joy, but also ensured the continuity of his legacy and the expansion of his influence in the community. The family harmony was evident, with the children frequently gathering for celebrations and feasts. Job's religious devotion was a fundamental aspect of his life. He not only professed his faith but lived it actively, performing purification rituals for his children. This practice demonstrated his deep concern for the spiritual well-being of his family, going beyond common social obligations. Job acted as a priest for his family, interceding for them and seeking to maintain a right relationship with the divine. Job's integrity was recognized by all. He was known as a just and upright man who feared God and shunned evil. This reputation was not just a matter of public appearances, but reflected a genuine commitment to high ethical and moral principles. In a society where corruption and injustice often prevailed, Job stood out as a beacon of righteousness. Job's prosperity extended beyond his material possessions. He enjoyed great respect and influence in the community. His advice was valued and his word carried weight in important decisions. This leadership position came not only from his wealth, but also from his recognized wisdom and integrity. Job was a living example of how righteousness and success could coexist harmoniously. Generosity was another notable characteristic of Job. He did not keep his wealth only for himself, but used it to benefit the less fortunate. His home was known as a place of hospitality, where the needy found help and comfort. This attitude of sharing his blessings further reinforced his position of respect in the community. Job's relationship with his servants was remarkably fair and compassionate. For the standards of the time, he did not see them just as property or labor, but as human beings worthy of respect and care. This progressive attitude towards workers was yet another evidence of Job's exceptional character. Job's daily life was marked by a balance between his material and spiritual responsibilities. He managed his business diligently, but never allowed the pursuit of wealth to compromise his moral principles. This balance was a living testimony that it is possible to be successful in business without sacrificing personal integrity. The education and upbringing of Job's children were a priority in his life. He not only provided for their material needs, but also endeavored to impart ethical and spiritual values. Family gatherings were not only occasions of joy, but also opportunities to reinforce bonds and teach important lessons about life and faith. Job's respect for divine creation was reflected in his responsible management of natural resources. His herds were cared for with attention, and he practiced sustainable agriculture long before this concept became popular. This approach demonstrated a deep understanding of the interconnectedness between man and nature. Job's wisdom was often sought to resolve disputes and offer counsel. He acted as an informal judge in his community, mediating conflicts with impartiality and discernment. His ability to see beyond appearances and get to the heart of issues made him a valuable resource for maintaining peace and justice in his society. Job's religious practices went beyond formal ritual. He cultivated a personal and intimate relationship with God, seeking divine guidance in all areas of his life. This deep spirituality was the source of his moral strength and wisdom, influencing all his decisions and actions. Job's prosperity did not make him arrogant or distant. He maintained a humble attitude, recognizing that all his blessings came from God. This humility made him accessible to everyone, regardless of their social status, and was a fundamental aspect of his character, admired by many. Job's legacy extended beyond his immediate family. He invested time and resources in mentoring the next generation, sharing his wisdom and experience with the community's youth. This commitment to the future demonstrated his long-term vision and desire to leave a lasting positive impact. Jobs' life was therefore a living testament to how faith, integrity, and wisdom can combine to create a life of meaning and impact. His story serves as an inspiring example of how to live a full and purposeful life, balancing material success with spiritual depth and social responsibility in the heavenly realm. An extraordinary scene unfolded. The sons of God presented themselves before him, and among them was Satan. This celestial encounter set the stage for an unprecedented test of faith, centered on the life of a righteous man named Job. The dialogue that followed between God and Satan would reveal profound truths about the nature of faith, temptation, and divine purpose. God, in his omniscience, initiated the conversation by asking Satan where he had come from. The adversary's response, having been roaming the earth, suggested a role of observer and tempter of humanity. This exchange set the scene for a celestial debate about the true nature of human fidelity, specifically Job's. With paternal pride, God drew Satan's attention to his servant Job. He described him as a man of integrity and righteousness who feared God and shunned evil. This characterization was not just praise, but an implicit challenge to Satan, questioning whether he had found anyone as faithful in his travels across the earth. Satan, cunning in his approach, did not directly contest Job's integrity. Instead, he questioned the motives behind this fidelity. His argument was incisive: Job was faithful only because God had blessed him abundantly. This accusation touched the core of the question of genuine faith. Was Job's devotion based on true love for God, or merely a response to received blessings? Satan's challenge was audacious. He proposed that if God removed his protection and blessings from Job, this seemingly faithful man would curse God to his face. This suggestion not only questioned Job's integrity, but also insinuated that all human faith was at its core self-interested and conditional. In a surprising decision, God accepted Satan's challenge. He allowed his faithful servant to be subjected to trials with one condition: Job's life must be spared. This divine permission raises deep questions about the role of suffering in the lives of the faithful and the greater purpose behind trials. God's confidence in Job was evident by allowing Satan to test him. God demonstrated not only his faith in his servant's integrity, but also his sovereignty over all circumstances, including the actions of the adversary himself. This divine act revealed a greater plan in motion, a plan that transcended immediate human understanding. The celestial challenge invites us to reflect on the nature of our own faith. Are we faithful to God only when things go well? Is our devotion based on genuine love or an expectation of rewards? These are questions that every believer must face on their spiritual journey. God's permission for Job to be tested also raises questions about the purpose of suffering in the lives of the righteous. Do trials serve to refine and strengthen our faith? How can we maintain our integrity in the face of seemingly unjust adversities? Job's story challenges us to examine our own responses to these difficult questions. The dialogue between God and Satan also illuminates the reality of the spiritual conflict that occurs beyond the visible realm. It reminds us that our earthly struggles may have cosmic implications, being part of a larger narrative that we often do not fully comprehend. God's confidence in Job serves as a powerful reminder of the value he places on human fidelity. Even in the face of Satan's accusations, God did not hesitate to point out Job as an example of righteousness. This encourages us to persevere in our faith, knowing that our fidelity is noticed and valued by God. The celestial challenge also highlights the contrast between Satan's limited perspective and God's infinite wisdom. While Satan saw only superficial motivations, God knew Job's heart. This reminds us that God sees beyond appearances and understands our inner struggles in a way that others cannot. God's decision to allow Job's suffering reveals a profound truth about the nature of faith. True faith is not merely a response to blessings, but an unwavering trust that persists even in the midst of adversities. Job's test would be a living demonstration of this truth, not only for Satan but for all future generations. This celestial episode invites us to consider our own stance in the face of trials. How do we react when our faith is tested? Do we maintain our integrity? Even when we do not understand the reasons behind our struggles, Job's story challenges us to cultivate a faith that remains firm, regardless of circumstances. The celestial challenge between God and Satan centered on Job's life sets the stage for one of the most profound explorations of faith and suffering in religious literature. It invites us to deeper reflection on the nature of our own faith and our response to life's trials. The day Job's life changed drastically began like any other. While his children celebrated in harmony, a series of messengers arrived, each bringing more devastating news than the previous one. The sequence of disasters that befell Job was as sudden as it was overwhelming, testing the limits of his faith and resilience. The first messenger brought news of a Sihon attack. These raiders not only stole Job's oxen and donkeys, but also killed the servants tending the animals. This attack was not just a significant material loss, but also a human tragedy, with the death of loyal workers whom Job likely considered part of his extended family. Before Job could fully process this first news, a second messenger arrived. This time the calamity came from the heavens. Fire, described as God's fire, fell and consumed the sheep and the servants guarding them. The mention of God's fire adds a layer of complexity to the situation, suggesting an apparently supernatural event and raising questions about the nature of divine intervention. The third blow came in the form of a Chaldean attack. This nomadic tribe, known for their violent incursions, attacked in 3 groups, taking all of Job's camels and killing the servants. Caring for them, the loss of the camels, valuable animals for trade and transport, represented another severe blow to Job's wealth and lifestyle. The final and perhaps most devastating tragedy was announced by the fourth messenger. A powerful wind from the desert struck the house where Job's children were celebrating. The structure collapsed, killing all 10 of Job's children. This incomparable personal loss eclipsed all previous material losses, striking Job at the core of his existence. His family, the speed and intensity with which these calamities followed are notable in a matter of moments. Job lost practically everything he owned: his wealth, his servants, and most painfully, all his children. The devastation was total, leaving Job stripped of everything that had once defined his life and status. Job's initial reaction to this series of tragedies is a powerful testament to his faith and character. Instead of cursing God or falling into despair, Job responded with a profound act of mourning and worship. He tore his clothes, shaved his head, traditional gestures of mourning, and prostrated himself in worship. Job's words in this moment of extreme anguish are often cited as an example of unwavering faith. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. This statement reveals a deep acceptance of God's sovereignty and a recognition that everything we possess is ultimately a temporary gift. It is important to note that despite his immense pain, Job did not blame God for his losses. The text specifically mentions that in all this Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. This response challenges the notion that genuine faith depends on favorable circumstances or continuous blessings. Job's experience raises profound questions about the nature of suffering and its relationship to faith. How can one maintain faith in the face of such catastrophic losses? Job's response suggests that true faith transcends external circumstances and is rooted in a deeper understanding of God's nature and our relationship with Him. Job's extreme suffering also invites us to reflect on the purpose of adversity in the lives of the faithful. Do trials serve to refine and strengthen our faith? How can we find meaning and even growth amid devastating circumstances? Job's sudden reversal of fortune challenges our understanding of divine justice. How can a just and God-fearing man suffer so intensely? This question lies at the heart of the book of Job and continues to challenge theologians and believers. Today, Job's story also reminds us of the fragility of life and material possessions. In an instant, everything we consider secure can be lost. This reality invites us to reflect on where we place our trust and what we truly value in our lives. Job's suffering was not only physical or material, but deeply emotional and spiritual. The loss of his children in particular represents a pain that few can imagine. His ability to maintain faith in the face of such loss is a powerful testament to the depth of his relationship with God. The calamities that befell Job, seemingly orchestrated by Satan, but permitted by God, raise complex questions about the role of evil in the world and the limits of divine power. How can we reconcile the existence of evil with the goodness and omnipotence of God? Job's story does not offer simple answers, but invites us to deeper reflection on these mysteries. After the first wave of calamities, the celestial scene once again becomes the stage for a crucial dialogue between God and Satan. This divine conversation echoes the previous one, but with renewed intensity. God once again draws attention to Job's unwavering integrity, highlighting how he maintained his righteousness even in the face of devastating losses. This divine observation serves as an implicit challenge to Satan, whose predictions about Job's conditional faith did not materialize. Satan, however, is not defeated with cunning. He argues that the test was not severe enough. He then proposes an even more radical test to affect Job's physical health. Skin for skin, Satan declares, suggesting that a man will give up everything to save his own life. This new proposal raises the stakes of the celestial challenge, focusing on the resilience of the human spirit in the face of intense physical suffering, with a carefully delineated divine permission. Satan is authorized to afflict Job with the sole restriction of sparing his life. This divine concession reveals both God's sovereignty and the limits imposed on the power of evil. The stage is set for an even more intense test of faith, probing the limits of human devotion in the face of physical agony without delay. Job is struck by a terrible physical affliction, from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. His body is covered in painful and repulsive sores. Job's condition is so severe that he is forced to sit among the ashes, scraping his sores with a piece of broken pottery. This vivid image illustrates the depth of his suffering and the degradation of his condition. Job's wife, a witness to all his torment, emerges as a voice of despair and disbelief. Her words, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die," reflect a common perspective in the face of seemingly unjust suffering. Her reaction serves as a stark contrast to Job's persistent faith, further highlighting this man's extraordinary spiritual resilience. Job's response to his wife is notable for its wisdom and firmness. He gently rebukes her, questioning whether they should accept only good from God and not trouble. This profound statement reveals a mature understanding of divine sovereignty, accepting that both blessings and adversities can be part of God's plan. Once again, the text emphasizes that even in this extreme situation, Job did not sin with his lips. It is at this moment of deep affliction that three of Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, enter the scene upon hearing of the calamities that had befallen Job. They travel from their lands to offer comfort and sympathy. Their initial gesture is touching. They sit with Job on the ground for 7 even days and 7 nights without saying a word, silently acknowledging the magnitude of his suffering. This period of compassionate silence marks a crucial transition in the narrative. It is a moment of calm before the storm of words that is to come. Job's friends, moved by a sincere desire to help, will soon begin to offer their interpretations and advice on Job's situation. Their words, although well-intentioned, will ignite an intense theological and philosophical debate. The silence is finally broken when Job, unable to contain his anguish any longer, opens his mouth to curse the day of his birth. This passionate lament serves as a catalyst for a series of profound and often controversial dialogues, with his friends each in their own way will try to explain Job's suffering and offer advice on how he should respond. Eliphaz, the first to speak, bases his arguments on personal experiences and spiritual visions. His approach, though gentle at first, sets the tone for a line of thinking that will permeate all the friends' speeches: the belief that suffering is always a direct consequence of sin. This perspective, though common, will be challenged by Job's lived experience as the debate unfolds. Bildad and Zur also present their views, each reinforcing in different ways the idea that Job must have sinned to deserve such punishment. Their progressively harsher arguments contrast sharply with Job's assertions of innocence, creating a growing intellectual and emotional conflict. Job, for his part, steadfastly maintains his integrity. He not only defends his innocence, but also begins to question God's justice. His words, filled with pain and frustration, reveal a deep desire to understand the purpose behind his suffering. Job cries out for an audience with God, yearning for a direct explanation from the divine. The arguments intensify, with each round of speeches becoming more heated. Job's friends, unable to accept the possibility of suffering without guilt, become increasingly accusatory. Job, on the other hand, becomes more vehement in his declarations of innocence and his challenge to the apparent injustice of his situation. This philosophical and theological impasse sets the stage for a dramatic intervention. The ability of human wisdom to resolve the dilemma of Job's suffering through debates and arguments creates palpable tension in the narrative. It is in this context of frustration and relentless search for answers that the stage is set for something extraordinary: the entry of a new voice into the debate, bringing a fresh and challenging perspective to the discussion. The intense dialogue between Job and his friends marks a crucial point in the narrative. Job, in the midst of his unbearable suffering, vehemently defends his innocence. His voice, though laden with anguish, resonates with unwavering conviction. He not only maintains his integrity but also openly challenges the prevailing notion that his suffering is divine punishment for hidden sins. The arguments of Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zur follow a similar pattern, though each has their own approach. Eliphaz bases his assertions on personal experiences and spiritual visions. Bildad appeals to traditional wisdom and the teachings of the ancestors. Zur, the most impetuous of the three, insists on Job's guilt with almost dogmatic certainty. As the debate intensifies, Job finds himself not only battling his physical pain but also the misunderstanding of his friends. His responses become increasingly passionate and at times verge on despair. He cries out for justice, longing to present his case directly to God. Job's frustration with his comforters is palpable. He calls them worthless physicians and miserable comforters. His disappointment with their lack of empathy and understanding adds an extra layer of isolation to his suffering. Amid his laments, Job expresses a deep desire to understand the purpose behind his suffering. He questions divine justice not out of disbelief, but out of a sincere yearning to understand God's ways. His questions are bold, almost defiant, but always rooted in a deep faith, though shaken. The concept of a celestial mediator, or advocate, emerges in Job's speeches. He longs for someone to intercede for him before God, someone who can explain his case and prove his innocence. This desire for a mediator foreshadows theological themes that would later develop in various religious traditions. As the debate progresses, Job begins to express a growing confidence in his ultimate vindication. Despite his seemingly hopeless situation, he declares, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end, he will stand on the earth." This powerful statement of faith amid suffering would become one of the most memorable and quoted passages of the book. Job's friends, unable to accept his insistence on innocence, become increasingly critical in their accusations. They see Job's refusal to admit guilt as a form of arrogance and rebellion against God. The chasm between their perspectives and Job's deepens with each round of speeches. Job, in turn, begins to reflect more deeply on the nature of divine wisdom and justice. He acknowledges the limits of human understanding in the face of God's mysteries. Yet this does not stop him from continuing to question and seek answers. The debate reaches a philosophical stalemate. The circular arguments and repetitive accusations demonstrate the inability of human wisdom to resolve the dilemma of unjust suffering. This impasse sets the stage for a divine intervention as the debate unfolds. A growing tension develops. Job longs more and more for a direct audience with God. He desires to present his case not as a guilty defendant, but as someone seeking understanding and justice. Job's persistence in maintaining his integrity, even in the face of relentless accusations and continuous suffering, serves as a powerful testament to his faith. His refusal to curse God and die, as suggested by his wife, demonstrates extraordinary strength of character. Job's speeches also reveal an evolution in his understanding of God. While he questions divine justice, his faith remains intact. He transitions from viewing God as a distant judge to a more complex and personal conception of the divine. As the debate approaches its climax, the need for resolution becomes increasingly urgent. The limitations of human wisdom become evident, and the stage is set for a dramatic intervention that will transcend human arguments. The accumulated tension throughout the debates creates an atmosphere of expectation. Both Job and his friends have reached the limits of their arguments, and the reader is left yearning for a definitive answer. It is at this moment of maximum tension that a new voice is prepared to enter the scene, promising to bring a fresh perspective to the seemingly endless debate. The silence that followed the heated debates was dramatically broken out of a storm. The voice of God finally made itself heard. This divine intervention marks a crucial turning point in the narrative of Job, bringing a completely new perspective to the dilemma of suffering and justice. God's response did not come in the form of direct explanations or justifications for Job's suffering. Instead, he responded with a series of rhetorical questions, highlighting his incomparable power and wisdom in the creation and sustenance of the universe. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" This initial question set the tone for the divine discourse. God's words painted a vivid picture of the complexity and grandeur of creation. He spoke about the earth's foundations, the boundaries of the seas, the sunrise, the depths of the ocean, and the mysteries of the weather. Each question served to emphasize the vastness of divine knowledge and power in contrast to human limitations. God did not limit himself to natural phenomena. In his speech, he also described wonderful and powerful creatures such as Leviathan and Behemoth, highlighting his sovereignty over all creation, from the smallest creatures to the most imposing. These descriptions further illustrated the magnitude of divine power. God's response to Job did not provide a direct explanation for his suffering. Instead, it redirected the focus of the discussion, moving it from Job's specific circumstances to a broader perspective of cosmic order and divine wisdom, incomprehensible to humans faced with this overwhelming demonstration of divine power. Job's initial response was one of humble submission. He acknowledged the limitation of his understanding, declaring, "I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know." The divine speech did not deny Job's integrity, nor justify his suffering. Instead, it invited Job to consider his situation within a much larger context. God's cosmic plan, which transcends human understanding. This approach offered a new perspective on the problem of suffering. God's intervention also addressed Job's friends. He rebuked them for not speaking what is right about him, as Job had this divine validation of Job's integrity, served as a powerful vindication after the persistent accusations from his friends. God's response to Job did not provide a philosophical solution to the problem of evil and suffering. Instead, it reaffirmed God's sovereignty and wisdom, inviting humans to trust him, even when they cannot. Understand his ways. Job's encounter with God profoundly transformed his understanding and attitude. He moved from demanding answers and justifications to recognizing the unfathomable depth of divine wisdom. His final declaration, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you," indicates a new and deeper understanding of God. This direct experience with the divine led Job to profound repentance, not repentance for specific sins that would have caused his suffering, but a humble acknowledgement of his limitation before God's greatness. He repented in dust and ashes, symbolizing a complete change of perspective. The divine intervention did not only respond to Job, but also established an important precedent in religious literature. It demonstrated that sometimes God's response to human questioning comes in the form of an invitation to a broader perspective, rather than direct explanations. God's speech to Job also served as a powerful reminder of the difference between knowledge and wisdom. While human knowledge is limited, divine wisdom encompasses all creation and transcends human understanding. God's response, although it did not provide a direct explanation for Job's suffering, offered something equally valuable: a cosmic perspective that placed human trials in a larger context. This did not diminish Job's suffering, but it offered a new way of looking at it. This divine intervention marked the end of the philosophical debate and the beginning of a new phase in Job's spiritual journey. It set the stage for the restoration that was to come, not only in material terms but primarily in terms of a deeper and more mature understanding of the nature of God and his relationship with him after the powerful divine intervention. The narrative of Job enters its final phase: the restoration. This epilogue serves not only as a conclusion to Job's story, but also as a powerful affirmation of God's faithfulness and generosity. The restoration process began with a divine declaration about Job's integrity. God rebuked Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, for not speaking what was right about him. As Job had done this, divine validation served as a final vindication for Job, confirming that his insistence on his innocence was correct. As part of their Reaper command, God instructed Job's friends to offer sacrifices. Interestingly, he also asked Job to pray for his friends, promising to accept Job's prayer on their behalf. This act not only restored the relationship between Job and his friends, but also demonstrated Job's forgiving character. Job's material restoration was remarkable in its magnitude. The text reports that God gave Job twice as much as he had before his herds were multiplied. His wealth was restored, and his social position was reaffirmed. This material abundance served as a visible testimony to God's blessing. Besides material wealth, Job was also blessed with a new family. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, the same number of children he had before the calamities. Job's daughters are mentioned by name: Jemah, Keziah, and Karen Hapek, and are described as the most beautiful women in the land. An interesting detail is that Job gave his daughters an inheritance along with their brothers, and an unusual practice for the time. This can be seen as a reflection of Job's generosity and possibly a new appreciation for life and family. After his trials, longevity was another blessing granted to Job. The text states that he lived 140 years after his restoration, seeing his children and grandchildren to the 4th generation. This long life allowed Job to fully enjoy his restoration and leave a lasting legacy. Job's restoration did not erase his previous suffering, but offered a new perspective on it. Job emerged from his trials not only with restored material possessions, but with a deeper understanding of God and his own faith. The epilogue of Job's story serves as a powerful reminder of God's sovereignty and goodness. It demonstrates that while suffering can be intense and prolonged, it is not the final word in the lives of those who remain faithful. Job's restoration also offers a balanced perspective on material blessings, while Job's initial prosperity was seen by Satan as the reason for his faithfulness. His final restoration serves as a divine affirmation of his integrity, proven through suffering. It is important to note that Job's restoration did not come as a result of his demands or arguments, but after his humble encounter with God. This suggests that true restoration comes not from our efforts but from divine grace. The epilogue of Job's story raises intriguing questions about the nature of divine reward. While Job was abundantly blessed, his story reminds us that faithfulness to God should not be based on the expectation of material rewards. The narrative concludes by stating that Job died old and full of days. This phrase not only indicates a long life, but suggests a life full and satisfied. Job ended his journey not only materially restored, but spiritually enriched by his experience. The book of Job, with its epilogue of restoration, content continues to offer hope and perspective to those facing trials. It reminds us that, even in the darkest moments, there is the possibility of renewal and blessing. Finally, Job's story from his suffering to his restoration serves as a lasting testimony to God's faithfulness and the resilience of human faith in the face of extreme adversities. Job's journey from the height of prosperity to the depths of suffering and back to restoration offers us powerful lessons on how to face fear and adversity. Although Job's story predates Jesus, it echoes many of the teachings Christ would share centuries later. When facing our own fears and challenges, we can draw inspiration from Job's perseverance. Just as he maintained his faith even in the darkest moments, we too can find the strength to persist. Jesus taught us, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. This message of hope reminds us that, like Job, we can overcome our trials. Job's story shows us that questioning God is not a sign of lack of faith, but can be part of a deep and honest relationship with Him. Jesus also encouraged us to seek answers, saying, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you." Do not be afraid to bring your doubts and fears before God. Job's restoration reminds us of Jesus' words, "Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." When we maintain our integrity and faith as Job did, we can trust that God will take care of us, even if not always in the ways we expect. Now I ask you, how can Job's story and the teachings of Jesus help you face your fears today? What steps can you take to strengthen your faith and trust in God? Even in difficult times, remember, just as Job emerged from his trials with stronger faith and a deeper understanding of God, you too can grow through your challenges. Don't let fear paralyze you. Instead, use it as an opportunity to deepen your relationship with God and strengthen your faith. If this content touched your heart, and you want to continue learning about overcoming fear through faith, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Together, we can explore more teachings that help us live a life of courage and trust in God.